HOA Karen towed my $160,000 crane. Then I showed it was rebuilding their fire station. Why would an HOA Karen tow a $160,000 crane? And what happened when I showed what that crane was actually rebuilding? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. It's great to have you here for another story. Before we get started, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Thank you for spending your time with me today and for continuing to support the channel. Your support truly means a lot and helps keep these stories coming. And before we begin, tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? Now, let's get into the story. You're welcome, Cynthia Whitmore said, lifting her coffee cup toward the empty patch of gravel where my $160,000 crane had been sitting 12 hours earlier. For a second, I thought I had driven onto the wrong job site. The August sun was barely over the rooftops of Pine Ridge Estates, but the heat was already pulling the smell of diesel, hot dust, and hydraulic oil out of the ground. My boots crunched across the gravel as I stared at 4 square impressions left by the outriggers. The crane was gone. Not moved 20 feet. Not parked behind the temporary fencing. Gone. A broken plastic wheel chock rested near the curb, and 2 wide tire tracks curved toward the street where a heavy tow rig had dragged out sometime before sunrise. Cynthia stood on the sidewalk in white sneakers and pressed khakis, looking more prepared for an HOA newsletter photo than a construction site. "Where's my crane?" I asked. She smiled. "I had that industrial junk removed." The words landed strangely because she said them with the satisfaction of someone announcing she had finally gotten an abandoned refrigerator hauled away. I looked past her toward the temporary fencing. Behind it stood the blackened brick shell of Pine Ridge Fire Station No. 4, its old roof already stripped away, steel columns exposed against the pale morning sky. My crew was supposed to start setting the new roof structure at 7. 6 men were already waiting beside our flatbed, hard hats in their hands, watching me. Nobody said anything. Somewhere behind the station, a backup alarm beeped 3 times and stopped. I turned back to Cynthia. "You had my crane towed?" "Yes, Dan. I did." She took another sip of coffee. "You received multiple notices. Pine Ridge has standards. Residents shouldn't have to look at commercial machinery every morning." I could feel grit between my teeth from the dust. My first instinct was to reach for my phone and call the towing company. My second was better. "Who authorized it?" I asked. Her smile widened. "I did. As HOA president. Personally. That answer changed everything. I looked down at the fresh toe marks, then at Cynthia, then toward the fire station. 3 weeks of emails flashed through my head. Her violation notices. My permit responses. The survey I had sent twice. The county authorization she never acknowledged. In one sentence she had written in bold letters 2 nights earlier. "The equipment will be removed if you refuse to comply." I slipped my phone back into my pocket without making a call. Cynthia seemed disappointed that I wasn't arguing. "Something wrong?" she asked. "No," I said. "Actually, that's good." Her expression tightened. "What's good?" I walked toward the empty crane pad and crouched beside the tire tracks. There, half buried in the gravel, was a torn corner of the towing paperwork, damp with morning dew. I picked it up carefully. Cynthia's signature was still visible at the bottom. I folded it once and put it in my shirt pocket. Then I looked at my crew. Nobody calls her. Nobody argues with anybody. Take pictures of everything exactly as it is. Cynthia gave a short laugh behind me. She thought I was documenting a towing complaint. She had no idea why I wanted that signature preserved, or why the missing crane mattered far beyond its $160,000 price tag. I looked through the construction fence at the unfinished fire station and checked my watch. 6:18 a.m. Our first structural lift was scheduled in 42 minutes. For 22 years, heavy construction had taught me one rule that mattered more than almost anything else. When somebody makes a mistake around expensive machinery, don't interrupt them while they're putting it in writing. 3 weeks earlier, that crane had been the first machine I brought through the gates of Fire Station No. 4. I remember easing it off the access road at 6:30 in the morning, the diesel engine humming through the cab while sunlight flashed across the windshield. The machine was not new. It had scratches along the counterweight, faded yellow paint around the steps, and enough hours on the meter to tell you it had earned every dollar I paid for it. But it was mine. I had spent 22 years in heavy construction before I could afford equipment like that. I started at 19 as an iron worker carrying tools for men twice my age, then learned rigging, structural steel, and eventually crane operation. By 44, I owned Mercer Heavy Lift, a six-man company with 2 trucks, 1 crane, and exactly 0 room for expensive mistakes. That machine had cost me $160,000 used, financed against almost everything I owned. Every hydraulic hose mattered. Every inspection mattered. Every hour it worked helped pay somebody's mortgage, including mine. Inside the cab, beside a photograph of my daughter Emily at her high school graduation, I kept a red laminated permit card for every active municipal job. The card for Fire Station Number 4 listed the project number, county authorization, inspection dates, and emergency services contact information. It was impossible to miss unless someone deliberately chose not to read it. The station itself had been damaged by an electrical fire 8 months earlier. Nobody had been hurt, but the roof structure was beyond repair. Until reconstruction finished, the department was operating from temporary facilities several miles away. My contract was simple on paper. Unload the structural steel, position the crane on the approved municipal parcel, lift the new roof trusses into place, and clear the site before the next phase began. The schedule was not flexible. Summer heat had dried the surrounding grasslands to the color of old rope, and Fire Chief Raymond Cole wanted his station fully operational before the worst part of wildfire season. I understood why. Construction schedules usually revolve around money. This one revolved around response time. That first morning, my crew set the outriggers on timber pads while I walked the perimeter with the project superintendent. The air smelled like fresh-cut lumber, diesel exhaust, and the bitter remains of burned roofing material. By 8, everything was level, inspected, and exactly where the site plan said it should be. Then a white Lexus rolled slowly past the barricades. It stopped, backed up, stopped again. A woman lowered the passenger window and held up her phone. She took 3 photographs of my crane without saying a word. 10 minutes later, she came walking toward us carrying a clipboard. Cynthia Whitmore introduced herself before I could ask. President of Pine Ridge Estates. She looked past me at the crane. That cannot stay there. I thought she was joking. It is working here. Residents have already complained about the view. I pointed toward the construction sign, then toward the red permit card visible through the crane windshield. This is a permitted municipal project. Cynthia barely glanced at either one. County permits do not override community standards. That sentence told me almost everything I needed to know about her. Still, I stayed polite. I explained that the equipment was positioned on the fire station parcel, not HOA property, and would remain until the scheduled lifts were complete. She tapped her pen against the clipboard. I know exactly where HOA property ends, Mr. Mercer. I remember that sentence because of how confidently she said it. Then she photographed the crane one more time, climbed into her Lexus, and drove away. By the time I got home that evening, her first violation notice was waiting in my email. The first notice arrived at 7:43 that evening, right as I was washing hydraulic grease from my hands at the kitchen sink. The subject line read Community Equipment Violation, and Cynthia had copied 3 HOA board members as if my crane were some neighborhood emergency. She cited an architectural rule prohibiting commercial machinery from being stored within view of residential property and demanded removal within 48 hours. I read it twice, dried my hands, and sent back the county site plan showing the fire station parcel outlined in blue. I attached my construction permit, equipment authorization, and project schedule. Then I wrote one sentence. The crane is operating on municipal property outside Pine Ridge Estates jurisdiction. I figured that would end it. It did not. The next morning, Cynthia was parked across from the station before my crew arrived. Her white Lexus sat under a maple tree with the engine running while she photographed our flatbed, rigging boxes, and orange lifting straps. When I walked past, she lowered her window. Expensive perfume drifted out over the smell of diesel. "You received my notice?" she asked. "And you received my permits." Her mouth tightened. "You contractors always think permits mean you can do whatever you want." I looked at the fire station behind me. "They usually mean I can do what the permit says." She drove away without answering. 2 days later, the second notice arrived. $1,000 for continued noncompliance. That one caught my attention because the HOA had no contract with me, no ownership interest in my equipment, and no authority over the parcel. I forwarded everything to the project superintendent and Fire Chief Raymond Cole. Raymond called 10 minutes later. Want me to handle her? He asked. Not yet, I said. Let me see where she is going with this. I had learned something during 22 years around construction disputes. People who misunderstand authority usually reveal more when nobody stops them. Cynthia did exactly that. Her emails became longer. She complained about engine noise at 7 in the morning, even though our permitted work hours began at 6:30. She complained about tire marks on an access lane that belonged to the city. Then she complained that the crane boom interrupted what she called the neighborhood's scenic sight line. That phrase bothered me. Pine Ridge Estates was a subdivision of 2-story homes, trimmed lawns, and decorative stone mailboxes. Nobody had ever described the view behind a municipal fire station as scenic. Then, on Friday afternoon, I saw Cynthia hammering a real estate sign into the lawn of a house directly across from our construction entrance. The sign carried her photograph and the name Whitmore Premier Realty. Beneath it was a glossy brochure box. I took one on my way back to the crane. The first page showed the house at sunset. The second described Pine Ridge as a quiet luxury community with unobstructed views. I looked through the windshield at Cynthia's listing, then up at my crane boom stretching nearly 100 feet into the sky. Suddenly, her obsession made sense. This was not about community standards. She had a commission sitting across the street from my job site, and my equipment was ruining the picture she wanted buyers to see. That evening, another email arrived. Cynthia had stopped asking. The equipment will be removed if you refuse to comply. I printed it, placed it in a folder beside her first 2 notices, and wrote the date across the top. She thought she was building a case against me. I was beginning to realize she was building mine. By Monday morning, Cynthia had upgraded her little paperwork campaign into something that looked almost official. A bright orange notice was zip-tied to the temporary fence beside our construction entrance, laminated against the weather and stamped with the Pine Ridge Estates logo. Unauthorized commercial equipment. Final removal warning. My foreman, Mike Dawson, stood beside it holding his coffee and shaking his head. Does she think the HOA owns a fire station now? He asked. Apparently 48 feet of sidewalk comes with an empire, I said. I cut the notice loose, photographed it exactly where she had placed it, and added it to my folder. Then I did what Cynthia apparently had not bothered to do. I measured. The county survey monument sat near the southeast corner of the parcel, a small brass disc embedded in concrete. From there, the municipal boundary ran north along the access lane, turned behind the station, and stopped well beyond our crane pad. I pulled a 100-foot tape across the gravel with Mike holding the other end. The closest Pine Ridge property line was 41 feet from the crane's left outrigger. 41 feet. Cynthia had been standing farther inside municipal property when she attached her warning than my crane had ever been to HOA land. I photographed the measurement and emailed it to her with the survey map. Her response came 11 minutes later. Your interpretation of boundary records does not supersede HOA enforcement authority regarding visual and environmental impact. I stared at that sentence while the hydraulic pump hummed behind me. She had changed the argument again. First, the crane was supposedly on HOA property. Then it violated community equipment rules. Now simply seeing it from Pine Ridge somehow gave her authority over it. I forwarded the message to Chief Raymond Cole. This time he drove over personally. Raymond was 58, broad-shouldered, gray around the temples, and patient in the way people become after decades of dealing with emergencies and bureaucracy. He read Cynthia's email on my phone, looked across the street at her real estate sign, then looked at me. Dan, this is city property. I know. She knows. I have told her 3 times. Raymond exhaled through his nose. I can have the city attorney send something. I almost said yes. Then Cynthia's Lexus turned onto the street. She parked beside the listing house and stepped out carrying brochures. A couple in their 30s met her at the driveway. I watched her gesture toward the neighborhood, then toward the house, carefully keeping her body positioned so the crane sat behind her instead of in their view. That told me more than another email ever could. Give me one more day, I told Raymond. Why? I folded Cynthia's latest notice and slid it into the folder. Because she keeps changing her reason, and I want every version. That afternoon, a certified letter arrived at our office. Cynthia had signed it herself. It claimed Pine Ridge Estates possessed enforcement authority over the construction access area and demanded removal of my equipment before 6 the following morning. Attached was a warning that the HOA would arrange towing at my expense if I failed to comply. I spread the letter, county survey, municipal site plan, and her listing brochure across my desk. The paper smelled faintly of fresh toner. For documents. For different stories. Only one matched the property records. I called the county planning office and asked for the recorded parcel map, not the online copy. Elena Ramirez, the county inspector assigned to our project, emailed it 20 minutes later. The legal boundary was even clearer on the recorded version. Pine Ridge Estates ended 41 feet before my crane pad. Then Elena added something I had not asked for. Daniel, you should know that Access Lane is dedicated exclusively to municipal emergency services. The HOA has no enforcement rights there. I leaned back in my chair and listened to the air conditioner rattle above me. Cynthia had threatened to remove a permitted machine from land she did not own, using authority she did not have, for a real estate view she personally stood to profit from. And now she had signed her name to all of it. At 4:47 the next morning, while I was still 20 minutes from the job site, my phone buzzed against the cup holder. It was an automatic motion alert from the temporary security camera mounted above our equipment gate. I pulled into a gas station, parked beneath the white glow of the canopy lights, and opened the live feed. Two heavy tow trucks were sitting beside my crane. Their amber lights flashed across the gravel. Cynthia stood near the gate wearing a pale windbreaker and holding a clipboard. Even through a phone screen, I recognized that clipboard. One driver walked around the crane slowly, checking the tires and looking through the cab window. Then he pointed directly at the red laminated permit card behind the windshield. Cynthia stepped closer. They spoke for almost a minute. There was no audio, but the driver's body language told the story. He pointed toward the fire station, then toward the municipal construction sign, then back at Cynthia. She opened her folder, pulled out a document, and handed it to him. He read it under the truck lights. A moment later, she signed something against the hood of her Lexus. My thumb hovered over Mike Dawson's number. One call could have sent my crew there immediately. Another could have brought Chief Raymond Cole to the site before sunrise. Instead, I watched. Cynthia had already ignored the permits, the survey, the recorded parcel map, and the written explanation of where her authority ended. Now she was apparently willing to put her version on paper for a third party. That mattered. At 5:12, the tow crew began preparing the crane for transport. I saved the camera footage to cloud storage and downloaded a second copy to my phone. Then I called Mike. Do not go to the site yet, I told him. What happened? Cynthia is towing the crane. Silence filled the line. She is actually doing it? Yes. You want me to stop them? No. I want you at the yard at 6. Bring everyone. We are documenting lost crew time from the minute the shift starts. He understood immediately. Construction runs on records. Labor hours. Equipment hours. Mobilization charges. Inspection windows. Every delay has a clock attached to it. By 5:38, the crane was rolling away behind the tow rig. The red permit card was still visible through the windshield. Cynthia remained at the curb until the convoy disappeared, then took a photograph of the empty pad. At 5:46, she sent me an email. The subject line was enforcement completed. I opened it before pulling back onto the highway. The unauthorized commercial equipment has been permanently removed from Pine Ridge community property following repeated failure to comply. I read that sentence twice. Then I smiled. She had just described the tow in her own words, from her own email account, minutes after supervising it herself. I printed the message as soon as I reached our office and placed it on top of the folder. At 6:10, I drove to the station. That was where the morning from 3 weeks earlier finally caught up with the empty gravel pad, Cynthia's coffee, and her cheerful little, "You're welcome." After she admitted personally authorizing the tow, I found the torn corner of paperwork near the tire tracks and told my crew to photograph everything. Then I called the towing company. Travis Boone, the owner, answered on the 4th ring. I gave him the crane serial number. His voice changed. "Mr. Mercer, I was about to call you. Who told you they own the property?" There was a pause. Cynthia Whitmore. She signed an authorization stating she represented the controlling property association. Did your driver question her? Another pause. Yes. I looked through the fence at the roof trusses waiting on the ground. Good, I said. Please do not explain anything to her. Just send me copies of every document she signed. 10 minutes later, the first file appeared in my inbox. Cynthia's signature sat at the bottom in blue ink. She had finally done exactly what I needed her to do. The document Travis Boone sent me was better than I expected. Cynthia had not merely requested a tow. She had signed a property control affidavit stating that Pine Ridge Estates possessed authority over the exact location where my crane had been parked. She had entered the date, the address, her title as HOA president, and even initialed a paragraph confirming that she accepted responsibility for the accuracy of the information. I could hear the printer feeding pages behind me as I opened the next attachment. The tow company had photographed everything before touching the crane. One picture showed the municipal construction sign. Another showed the red permit card inside my windshield. A third showed Cynthia standing beside the machine while Travis's driver pointed toward the fire station. She had been given every opportunity to stop. She had chosen a pen instead. I called Elena Ramirez at the county inspection office. "I need you to confirm something in writing," I said. Was my crane positioned entirely inside the fire station number 4 municipal parcel? I heard keyboard clicks through the phone. Yes, I inspected that setup myself. Any part of it inside Pine Ridge property? No. Any HOA authority over the access lane? None. Her answer arrived by email 6 minutes later, attached to the recorded survey. I printed both. Then I called Raymond Cole. He was already at the temporary fire department facility when he answered. "The crane is sitting in an impound yard 12 miles away," I told him. Raymond went quiet. "Can you recover it today?" "Probably. But we already missed the morning lift window." That was the real problem. Our structural steel inspection had been scheduled around the crane operation. The rigging crew was booked. The roof trusses were staged in sequence. A county inspector had reserved the morning. You cannot remove the central machine from a coordinated lift and simply pretend the schedule never moved. By 8:15, Mike had 6 employees sitting on paid standby. I recorded every hour. The project superintendent documented the missed lift. Elena documented the canceled inspection window. Travis documented the tow. Nobody exaggerated anything. We did not need to. Cynthia's decision was expensive enough on its own. At 9:23, another email arrived from her. "Please confirm that no additional commercial equipment will be brought into Pine Ridge without HOA approval." I almost laughed. She still believed she had won. I did not answer. Instead, I created a timeline. First notice, my permit response. Second notice, survey response. Her real estate listing. Final removal threat. Recorded parcel map. Security footage. Tow affidavit. Enforcement completed email. Every page received a date and time. Every photograph received a file number. By noon, the folder was nearly an inch thick. Then Raymond called again. "Dan, we have a bigger scheduling issue." I leaned against the hood of my truck. The metal was hot through my shirt. "How big?" "If the roof installation slips past this week, the electrical contractor cannot start Monday. If electrical moves, inspections move. If inspections move, reopening moves." Behind him, I could hear radios and the hollow echo of the temporary station. Pine Ridge was still being covered, but crews were operating from farther away until number 4 reopened. Nobody was in immediate danger, but every unnecessary delay mattered. That was when Cynthia's little campaign stopped being funny. She had spent weeks claiming she was protecting her neighborhood from an eyesore. Now the neighborhood's own fire station was sitting unfinished because she wanted a cleaner view for a real estate listing. Raymond asked if I wanted him to call her. "Not yet," I said. "I want the board in the room when she learns what she signed." By 3 that afternoon, an emergency HOA meeting had been scheduled for Thursday evening. Cynthia responded within minutes. She wrote that she welcomed the opportunity to explain why commercial operators must respect community authority. I printed that email too. Then I placed the red permit card, recovered from the crane cab at the impound yard, on top of the folder. Cynthia had looked straight through that windshield before the tow. Thursday night, she was finally going to read what had been sitting there the entire time. Thursday arrived with the kind of dry evening heat that made the pavement shimmer even after sunset. I reached the Pine Ridge clubhouse at 6:20 with one folder under my arm and the red permit card tucked inside the front cover. Through the glass doors, I could already see Cynthia moving between rows of folding chairs, arranging papers like she was preparing for a victory speech. Her white Lexus was parked directly beneath the clubhouse lights, spotless as always. Across the lot sat Raymond Cole's department vehicle, Elena Ramirez's county sedan, and Travis Boone's tow truck. Cynthia noticed those vehicles too. Her smile slipped for half a second, then returned. "Mr. Mercer," she said when I walked inside. "I hope tonight finally clears up your misunderstanding about HOA authority." "That is exactly what I am hoping," I said. The room smelled like coffee, carpet cleaner, and warm printer toner. Nearly 40 residents filled the chairs. Several were whispering about the unfinished fire station. One man asked another why the crane had disappeared. Cynthia called the meeting to order at 6:30 sharp. She stood behind a folding table with 3 board members beside her and began talking about property values, neighborhood appearance, and what she called unauthorized industrial encroachment. She displayed photographs of my crane taken from the house she was listing. Every photograph was framed so tightly that the fire station construction sign was outside the image. That detail almost impressed me. Almost. Then Cynthia held up her final removal notice. After repeated attempts to secure voluntary compliance, I exercised the association's authority to remove the equipment. I watched 2 board members exchange glances. One of them, a retired accountant named Harold Bennett, raised his hand. "Cynthia, did the board vote on the tow?" She paused. "Emergency enforcement does not require a full vote." Harold looked down at the bylaws in front of him. "Where does it say that?" The room changed. Not dramatically, just enough. Chairs stopped squeaking. People leaned forward. Cynthia tried to move on, but I stood. "Before we discuss the tow, I would like to establish where the crane was located." I placed the recorded county survey on the table. Elena stepped forward and introduced herself. She traced the municipal boundary with one finger. "The equipment pad is entirely within the fire station number 4 parcel. The nearest Pine Ridge property line is 41 feet away." Cynthia folded her arms. "The HOA has authority over visual impacts affecting residents." Elena looked at her. "Not on municipal emergency services property." I placed Cynthia's first violation notice beside the survey, then her second, then her final letter. 3 different explanations lined up under the fluorescent lights. Next came the glossy real estate brochure. I turned it toward the board. "This house is directly across from the construction entrance. Cynthia is the listing agent." A murmur moved through the room. Cynthia's face hardened. "That is irrelevant." "Maybe," I said. "So let us stick to the tow." Travis Boone walked to the table carrying his own file. He placed Cynthia's signed affidavit beside mine. "My driver questioned the property authority before moving the crane," he said. "Miss Whitmore confirmed in writing that Pine Ridge controlled the location." Cynthia immediately pointed at him. "Your company accepted the authorization. Based on the representation you signed," Travis replied. I did not need to say anything. The paper was doing the work. Then I placed my phone on the table and showed the security images. The municipal sign, the crane windshield, the red permit card, Cynthia standing beside both. Finally, I removed the actual red card from my folder and laid it in front of her. Raymond had been silent until then. He stepped forward, rested both hands on the table, and looked around the room. "There is one thing everyone here needs to understand," he said. "That crane was not being stored beside your neighborhood. It was scheduled to install the structural roof system on fire station number 4. Nobody moved. Even Cynthia stopped reaching for her papers. Raymond tapped the project number printed on the red card. The station that serves Pine Ridge. For the first time since I met her, Cynthia had nothing ready to say. The silence lasted long enough for the air conditioner above us to become the loudest thing in the room. Cynthia stared at the red permit card as if the words might rearrange themselves if she waited long enough. Raymond finally broke the silence. "Your decision delayed the roof installation, canceled a county inspection window, and pushed every contractor scheduled behind Mercer's crew." Harold Bennett leaned forward. "How much did this cost?" I opened my folder. "I am not giving you an estimate. I am giving you documented charges." I placed the crew standby sheet on the table. 6 employees, paid from 6 in the morning because they had reported for scheduled work. Next came the canceled rigging reservation, the crane recovery and remobilization costs, the towing charges, and the rescheduled inspection paperwork. I kept my voice flat. Numbers sound heavier when you do not decorate them. Cynthia looked from one page to another. "The association should not be responsible for all of this." "That is a question for your insurance carrier," Harold said. His tone had changed completely. Another board member, Susan Keller, opened the HOA bylaws and slid them toward Cynthia. "I still want to know where you found authority to order a tow without board approval." Cynthia straightened. I acted to protect community interests. A resident near the back spoke before anyone else could. By delaying our fire station? Cynthia turned toward him. That is not what happened. Raymond lifted the construction schedule. That is exactly what happened. He explained it without drama. The crane had been scheduled for a coordinated structural lift. Once that window disappeared, the steel crew, electrical contractor, county inspector, and follow-up trades had to be moved. Fire Station Number 4 would remain on temporary operations longer than planned. Nobody claimed the neighborhood was unprotected. Nobody needed to. The point was simpler. Cynthia had created an unnecessary delay in the very public project serving the residents she claimed to represent. Then Travis cleared his throat. There is another issue. He opened his file and removed the driver's written statement. My operator specifically asked Miss Whitmore whether the equipment was on HOA-controlled property because he saw the municipal sign and permit card. She confirmed that it was and signed the affidavit. Cynthia's fingers tightened around her pen. I relied on my understanding of the boundary. Elena answered immediately. Mr. Mercer sent you the correct recorded boundary before the tow. I pulled out the email confirmation showing the attachment and timestamp. Tuesday, 4:16 in the afternoon. Cynthia had replied 12 minutes later. She could no longer claim she had never received it. Harold closed the bylaws. We need an executive session. Cynthia blinked. For what? To discuss unauthorized board action, potential liability, and your conflict involving the property listing across from the station. The room erupted into low conversation. Cynthia tried to speak over it, but Harold raised one hand. Cynthia, please sit down. That was the moment the balance shifted. Not when Raymond mentioned the fire station. Not when Elena showed the boundary. It shifted when Cynthia realized the board was no longer asking me to justify my crane. They were asking her to justify herself. 20 minutes later, the board returned. Harold stood at the front table. Effective immediately, Cynthia's enforcement authority was suspended pending a formal review. She would no longer communicate with contractors, authorize towing, issue emergency notices, or represent Pine Ridge in property disputes. A special board vote would be held the following week regarding her position as president. The association would also notify its insurer and legal counsel. Cynthia gathered her papers slowly. The glossy real estate brochure remained on the table. She forgot it. I picked up the red permit card and slipped it back into my folder. As I walked toward the door, Raymond caught up beside me. How fast can you get that crane back on site? I looked through the clubhouse windows toward the dark outline of the unfinished station. Give me tomorrow morning, I said. After weeks of Cynthia trying to move my machine out of sight, the next thing Pine Ridge was going to see was exactly what that machine had come there to do. By 6:30 the next morning, the crane was back where it belonged. Travis Boone had waived the storage charge, and his crew helped coordinate the return before sunrise. When I climbed into the cab, the vinyl seat was still cool beneath me. I set the red permit card behind the windshield exactly where it had been before Cynthia ordered the tow. Then I turned the key. The diesel engine caught with a deep mechanical rumble, and the hydraulic system came alive with that familiar low hum I had heard thousands of times. Mike and the crew positioned the timber pads. The outriggers extended slowly, steel settling onto wood until the machine stood level and solid. Across the street, curtains moved in the windows of Pine Ridge. By 7:15, residents had started gathering along the sidewalk. This time nobody complained about the view. The first roof truss waited on the ground, nearly 60 feet of structural steel connected to the orange lifting strap Cynthia had photographed weeks earlier as evidence of our supposed industrial intrusion. Mike checked the rigging. Elena confirmed the revised inspection window. Raymond stood near the station entrance with several firefighters watching. I eased the controls forward. The cable tightened. The straps stretched straight. Then the truss lifted from the ground and rose against the clear blue sky. That was the image I remembered most. Not Cynthia's face at the meeting. Not the affidavit. Not the violation notices. Just that steel frame moving slowly above the station, while the crane she wanted removed did exactly what it had been brought there to do. By noon, 3 major trusses were in position. 2 days later, the roof structure was complete. The electrical contractor started after a revised inspection, and the project gradually recovered most of the lost schedule. The following week, Harold Bennett called me. Pine Ridge had completed its special board meeting. Cynthia was removed as president by vote. The board also adopted a rule requiring 2 authorized officers and legal review before any future towing action involving disputed property. Their insurance carrier began reviewing the documented costs connected to the incident, and the board opened a separate ethics review into Cynthia's real estate listing and whether her enforcement decisions had been influenced by her financial interest in the house across from the station. I did not celebrate. I sent my invoices, answered the questions I was asked, and went back to work. A month later, Fire Station Number 4 reopened. Raymond invited my crew to the small community ceremony. Fresh paint had replaced the smell of burned roofing. The new bay doors reflected the afternoon sun, and the American flag moved gently above the entrance. My daughter Emily came with me. She looked at the finished roof, then at the crane parked near the curb. "So that is what all the drama was about?" she asked. I laughed. "Pretty much." Across the street, Cynthia's real estate sign was gone. I never found out whether the house sold through her or someone else, and by then I did not care. The crane had another job scheduled Monday morning, another set of steel beams waiting somewhere else. Before leaving, I climbed into the cab and reached for the red permit card. Its corners were scratched from weeks behind the windshield. I almost threw it away because the project was finished. Instead, I kept it. It reminded me of something construction had taught me long before Pine Ridge ever entered my life. People can argue with you. They can send notices, make threats, and put impressive titles beneath their signatures. But boundaries are still boundaries. Records are still records. And when somebody refuses to read the paperwork, sometimes the smartest thing you can do is stay calm and let them sign their own. Cynthia wanted an ugly machine removed because she believed appearance mattered more than purpose. In the end, that same machine lifted the roof over the firefighters, protecting every home behind her perfectly trimmed entrance. Justice was never the loudest thing on that job site. The crane was. Justice just had better paperwork.